When I was 12 years old, my mother chose a monster over me. For 15 years, I carried the weight of what he did to me in silence. And then one ordinary Tuesday afternoon, I got the news that changed everything. He was in the ICU, fighting for his life. And I decided to make sure he knew exactly how much I still hated him for what he did to me. Before we dive into this story, if you believe that some people who derive joy in hurting other people, including a 12-year-old child, truly deserve whatever karma has for them, hit the like button. And if you want to hear more stories about justice being served, even when it takes years, subscribe and turn on notifications. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Drop a comment telling me where you are listening to my revenge story from. I like to know where you are supporting me from. Thank you for your support. It means a lot to me. I remember the exact moment my childhood ended. I was 12 years old, sitting at the kitchen table doing my homework, when my mom walked in with him. His name was Marcus, and he had this smile that made my skin crawl even before I knew why. He was tall, with rough hands and eyes that looked at me in a way that made me want to disappear into the walls. Mom sat down across from me, and I could see she'd been crying. Her eyes were red and puffy, and she kept twisting her wedding ring around her finger. That's when I knew something terrible was about to happen. "Sweetheart," she said, and her voice cracked. "Your dad and we're getting a divorce." The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I couldn't breathe. I just stared at her, waiting for her to say she was joking, that this was some kind of cruel prank. But she didn't. Instead, she reached over and grabbed Marcus's hand. "Marcus and I are in love," she continued, and I watched her fingers intertwine with his. "He's going to be living with us now." I looked at my dad's empty chair. He was working late that night, completely unaware that his whole world was about to collapse. And mine? Mine was already crumbling. That first week after Dad moved out was the worst week of my life. Or at least I thought it was. I had no idea how much worse things could get. Marcus moved into our house like he owned it. He sat in Dad's chair at dinner. He parked in Dad's spot in the driveway. He even started wearing Dad's old sweatshirt that Mom had kept. But the worst part? The absolute worst part was how Mom looked at him. She looked at Marcus the way she used to look at Dad, before things got complicated, before the fights and the silent dinners and the sleeping in separate rooms. She laughed at his jokes. She touched his arm when she walked by. She was happy. And I hated her for it. I hated her for choosing him over Dad. I hated her for bringing this stranger into our home. I hated her for not seeing what I saw in his eyes when she wasn't looking. The first time it happened, I was in my room doing homework. It was a Thursday night, about 3 weeks after Marcus moved in. Mom was working the night shift at the hospital. She was a nurse, and she'd picked up extra hours to help pay for the divorce lawyer. I heard his footsteps in the hallway, heavy and deliberate. My door was closed, but I hadn't locked it. I didn't think I needed to. He knocked once, barely a tap, and then opened the door before I could answer. "Hey there, kiddo," he said, leaning against the doorframe. He had a beer in his hand, and I could smell it from across the room. "Whatcha working on?" "Math homework," I said, not looking up from my textbook. My heart was pounding, and I didn't know why. Something about the way he was looking at me made every hair on my arm stand up. He walked into my room and sat down on my bed. Not on the edge, but right in the middle, like he belonged there. Like it was his space and not mine. "You know," he said, taking a sip of his beer, "your mom talks about you all the time. She's really proud of you." I didn't respond. I kept my eyes on my textbook, pretending to read the same problem over and over. You look a lot like her, he continued. Same eyes. Same smile. You're gonna be real pretty when you grow up. The way he said pretty made my stomach turn. I wanted to tell him to leave. I wanted to scream for him to get out of my room. But I was 12, and he was a grown man, and Mom loved him, and I didn't know what to do. He reached over and put his hand on my shoulder. His palm was warm and heavy, and I could feel it through my shirt. I froze. Every muscle in my body locked up. You're tense, he said, squeezing gently. Relax, kiddo. I'm just being friendly. But it didn't feel friendly. It felt wrong. It felt like something bad was about to happen, and I was powerless to stop it. That first time, he just touched my shoulder. He talked to me about school and asked about my friends and acted like a normal stepdad. But his hand stayed on my shoulder the whole time, squeezing and rubbing, and I wanted to throw up. When he finally left, I locked my door and cried into my pillow. I didn't understand what had just happened. I didn't have the words for it yet. All I knew was that something inside me had broken, and I didn't know how to fix it. It got worse after that. So much worse than I imagined. He started coming into my room more often. Always when Mom was at work. Always with that same beer in his hand, and that same look in his eyes. He'd sit too close to me. He'd touch my hair. He'd comment on what I was wearing. That shirt's a little tight, don't you think? He'd say, and I'd want to crawl out of my own skin. Or, you should wear dresses more often. You've got nice legs. I started wearing baggy clothes. Oversized hoodies and sweatpants, even in the summer. I stopped doing my homework at my desk and started doing it at the kitchen table, where there were more people around. I began locking my door every night and pushing my dresser in front of it. But it wasn't enough. 3 months after Marcus moved in, it happened. The thing I'd been dreading. The thing I couldn't even let myself think about because it was too terrible, too impossible, too nightmarish to be real. Mom was working a double shift. She'd be gone until morning. Marcus knew this. I knew this. And the knowledge hung in the air between us like a threat. I went to bed early that night, still wearing my jeans and hoodie. I locked my door and pushed my dresser in front of it and turned off the lights and prayed that he'd just leave me alone. But he didn't. Of course he didn't. I heard him try the doorknob first. Then he knocked. Open the door, he said. His voice was calm, almost friendly. Come on, kiddo. Don't be like that. I didn't respond. I pulled my blankets up to my chin and squeezed my eyes shut, and pretended I was somewhere else. Anywhere else, but not right in this house. I said open the door, he repeated, and this time his voice was harder and colder. When I still didn't respond, he started pushing against it. I heard my dresser scraping against the floor, inch by inch. He was strong. So much stronger than me, of course. I jumped out of bed and tried to push the dresser back, but it was no use. He was a grown man, and I was a 12-year-old girl, and physics wasn't on my side. The door opened, and there he was, standing in the light from the hallway. His face was red from the effort, and he was breathing hard. He wasn't smiling anymore. Why'd you lock the door? He asked, stepping into my room. What, you don't trust me? I backed away until I hit the wall. I wanted to scream, but my throat was closed up. I wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. Please, I managed to whisper. Please just leave. He didn't leave. What happened next is something I've spent 15 years trying to forget. I've buried it deep in the back of my mind, locked it away in a dark corner where I don't have to look at it. But it's always there, waiting. Every time I close my eyes. Every time I'm alone in a dark room. Every time someone touches me without warning. It's always there. When Mom came home the next morning, I was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. Marcus was making breakfast, humming to himself like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just destroyed me. "Good morning, sweetheart," Mom said, kissing the top of my head. She smelled like antiseptic and coffee. "Did you sleep well?" I wanted to tell her. God, I wanted to tell her so badly that I wanted to scream and cry and beg her to make him leave. But when I looked at Marcus, he was watching me. And the look on his face told me exactly what would happen if I said anything. Nobody would believe me. He'd deny it. He'd say I was lying, that I was just upset about the divorce, that I was trying to cause trouble. And Mom would believe him. Because she loved him. Because she'd chosen him over Dad. Because she'd already proven that I wasn't her first priority anymore. So I said nothing. I slept fine. I lied. And the words tasted like ash in my mouth. That's how it started. That's how I learned to live with a monster in my house. That's how I learned to be silent, to be small, to be invisible. For the next 3 years, until I was 15 and finally old enough to go live with my dad full-time, Marcus continued to hurt me. Not every day. Not even every week. But often enough that I lived in constant fear. Often enough that I forgot what it felt like to be safe. And Mom never knew. Or maybe she did know, somewhere deep down, but she chose not to see it. She chose him. She always chose him. When I finally moved out and went to live with Dad, I thought that would be the end of it. I thought I could leave Marcus behind and never think about him again. I thought I could move on. I was wrong. You don't just move on from something like that. You carry it with you. It becomes part of who you are, woven into the fabric of your personality. It shapes how you see the world, how you trust people, how you love. I went to therapy. I took medication for the anxiety and the depression and the nightmares. I tried to build a normal life. I went to college. I got a job. I even had a few relationships, though none of them lasted long. It's hard to let someone get close to you when you've spent years learning that closeness means pain. But through all of it, through every therapy session and every sleepless night and every panic attack in a grocery store because some random man looked at me the wrong way, there was one thought that kept me going. Someday, Marcus would pay for what he did to me. I didn't know how. I didn't know when. But I knew it would happen. The universe had to balance itself out eventually. Karma had to exist. Because if it didn't, if monsters like Marcus could just go through life hurting people without consequences, then what was the point of anything? Years passed. I turned 18, then 20, then 25. I built a life for myself, piece by careful piece. I got my degree in social work because I wanted to help kids like me, kids who were suffering in silence. I got my own apartment. I adopted a cat named Pepper. I learned how to sleep through the night without waking up screaming. But I never forgot. I kept minimal contact with my mom. We'd talk on the phone maybe once a month. Stiff and formal conversations about nothing important. She'd ask about work. I'd ask about her health. We never talked about Marcus. We never talked about why I'd moved out. We never talked about anything that mattered. She stayed with him. Through everything, she stayed with him. And that betrayal hurt almost as much as what he'd done to me. Maybe more. Because Marcus was a monster. But monsters do what monsters do. Mom was supposed to protect me. She was supposed to choose me. And she didn't. I heard things through the grapevine over the years. Small-town gossip has a way of traveling, even when you've moved away. I heard that Marcus had lost his job at the factory for getting into a fight with a coworker. I heard that he'd gotten arrested for drunk driving. I heard that he and Mom fought constantly, that the neighbors could hear them screaming at each other through the walls. Good, I thought every time I heard something bad about him. Good. I hope he's miserable. But it wasn't enough. A lost job, an arrest, some arguments? That wasn't justice. That wasn't payment for what he'd stolen from me. He'd taken my childhood, my innocence, my ability to trust. And in return he got what? A fine? Some community service? A slap on the wrist? No. That wasn't enough. Not even close. I fantasized about revenge constantly. In the shower, driving to work, lying awake at night. I'd imagine all the ways I could make him suffer. I could report him to the police, but it had been so many years, and I had no proof. It would be my word against his, and we all know how often that works out for the victim. I could confront him publicly, tell everyone what he'd done. But again, no proof. And it would just hurt me more than it hurt him. People would whisper. They'd wonder if I was telling the truth. They'd say, "But why did she wait so long? If it really happened, why didn't she say something at the time?" As if it's that simple. As if a terrified 12-year-old should have been brave enough to stand up to her abuser. As if the justice system was actually designed to protect people like me. I could do something more direct. Something physical. But that would make me the criminal, and he'd be the victim. The justice system doesn't care that he destroyed me first. They'd only care that I fought back. So I waited. And I hated myself for waiting. I hated that I was still giving him power over my life. I hated that even though he hadn't touched me in over a decade, he was still in my head, still making me angry, still making me cry. My therapist told me I needed to let go of the anger. She said holding on to it was only hurting me. She said the best revenge was living well, being happy, not letting him steal any more of my life. And I tried. I really did. But how do you let go of something like that? How do you just forgive and forget when someone has carved their cruelty into your very bones? I couldn't and I wouldn't. When I was 26, I heard that Marcus had gotten into another fight, this time at a bar. He'd broken someone's nose and gotten arrested again. I hoped he'd go to jail this time. I hoped he'd end up in a cell with someone bigger and meaner than him. I hoped he'd finally know what it felt like to be powerless and afraid. But he didn't go to jail. He got probation. Again. Because the justice system protects men like him. It always has. Around that time, I stopped seeing my therapist. Not because I was better, but because I was tired of pretending I wanted to heal. I didn't want to heal. I wanted revenge. And every time I sat in that beige office and talked about letting go and moving forward, I felt like I was betraying the little girl I used to be. The one who'd been hurt and silenced and told to just get over it. I withdrew from my friends. I threw myself into work. I helped other kids who were going through what I'd gone through. And maybe that was my way of getting revenge. Every kid I helped was a middle finger to Marcus. Every family I saved was proof that I was stronger than what he'd done to me. But it still wasn't enough. I started checking Mom's social media more often. She posted pictures sometimes, happy photos of her and Marcus at restaurants, at the beach, at family gatherings I was never invited to. They looked like a normal couple. They looked happy. It made me sick. How could she smile like that? How could she hold his hand and pose for pictures and act like everything was fine? Didn't she know? Didn't she suspect? Or did she just not care? I think that's what hurt the most. Not the abuse itself, although that was terrible enough. But the fact that my own mother had chosen to look the other way. She'd chosen her comfort over my safety. She'd chosen her love story over her daughter's trauma. And she got to be happy while I was still suffering. The years kept passing. I turned 27, then 28, then 29. I dated briefly here and there, but I could never let anyone get too close. The moment someone tried to touch me in a certain way, or said something in a certain tone, or looked at me with a certain expression, I'd shut down. I'd make an excuse and leave. I'd block their number. It was easier to be alone, and it was safer. My 30th birthday came and went without celebration. I'd stopped celebrating birthdays years ago. What was there to celebrate? Another year of carrying this weight? Another year of Marcus walking free while I was still imprisoned by what he'd done? That same year, I heard through an old friend that Marcus's drinking had gotten worse. He'd been fired from another job. He and Mom were fighting even more than usual. There were rumors that he'd been physical with her, that she'd shown up to work with bruises she'd tried to cover with makeup. And you know what? I didn't feel bad for her. I didn't feel sympathetic. I felt angry. This is what you chose, I thought. This is what you picked instead of your own daughter. I hope it was worth it. Maybe that makes me a bad person. Maybe I should have felt sorry for her, should have reached out, should have tried to help her leave him. But I couldn't. I had nothing left to give her. She'd used up all my compassion and love and forgiveness when I was 12 years old and needed her most. One night, about 6 months before everything changed, I had a dream about Marcus. In the dream, I was 12 again, and he was coming into my room. But this time, I wasn't afraid. This time I had a knife, and I used it. I woke up gasping, covered in sweat, my heart racing. And for a moment, just a moment, I felt disappointed that it had only been a dream. That's when I knew I'd reached my breaking point. That's when I realized the anger hadn't faded with time. If anything, it had grown stronger, more concentrated, like poison that had been distilling for 15 years. I needed something to happen. Some kind of closure, some kind of justice, some kind of proof that the universe wasn't completely indifferent to suffering. And then on a random Tuesday afternoon in March, I got it. I was at work when my phone buzzed. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. At first, I almost deleted it. I got spam texts constantly, and I'd learned to ignore them. But something made me open it. It was from my cousin Amy. We hadn't spoken in years, not since I'd cut most ties with my mom's side of the family. The message was short and to the point. Hey, I know we haven't talked in a while, but I thought you should know. Marcus is in the hospital. It's serious. Your mom's pretty upset. Thought you'd want to know. I stared at the message for a long time. My hands started shaking. I read it again. And again. And again. Marcus was in the hospital. It was serious. My first thought was, very good. My second thought was, what happened? I texted Amy back, trying to keep my tone neutral. Thanks for letting me know. What happened to him? The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. She was typing for a while, and I could picture her carefully choosing her words. Brain aneurysm. It popped. They had to do emergency surgery. He might not make it. I had to sit down. My legs literally gave out, and I collapsed into my desk chair. My coworker, Jamie, looked over at me with concern. You okay? She asked. You look like you've seen a ghost. I nodded, not trusting my voice. I stood up, grabbed my purse, and told my supervisor I wasn't feeling well and needed to leave early. She took one look at my face and didn't ask any questions. I drove home on autopilot, not really seeing the road. My mind was racing. A brain aneurysm. He might not make it. 15 years. 15 years I'd been waiting for something bad to happen to him. 15 years I'd been fantasizing about revenge, about justice, about him finally paying for what he'd done. And now it was happening. When I got home, I sat on my couch and just stared at the wall. Pepper jumped up next to me, purring and rubbing against my arm, but I barely noticed. I was somewhere else, lost in a storm of emotions I couldn't name. I felt relieved. I felt vindicated. I felt scared. I felt guilty for feeling relieved. I felt angry that I felt guilty. It was all tangled up inside me, a knot of conflicting emotions that I couldn't untangle. I needed more information. I needed to know exactly what was happening, how bad it was, what his chances were. So I did something I'd never done before. I called my mom. She answered on the third ring. Her voice was thick with tears, barely above a whisper. "Hello. Mom, it's me," I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. There was a pause. A long pause. We hadn't spoken in over a year. "Oh," she said finally. "Did Amy tell you?" "Yeah. She said Marcus is in the hospital." Mom made a sound that was half sob, half gasp. "It's bad, honey. It's really bad. The doctors say the next 48 hours are critical. If he makes it through, he'll probably have brain damage. He might not be the same." The way she said it, like brain damage was the worst possible outcome, like death might be preferable, made something cold and hard settle in my chest. "I'm sorry you're going through this," I said, and I was surprised to find that some small part of me actually meant it. Not for Marcus. Never for Marcus. But for her. Despite everything, she was still my mom. And she was hurting. "Can you come?" she asked suddenly. "Can you come to the hospital? I know things have been complicated between us. But I need you right now. I need my daughter." Every fiber of my being screamed no. The thought of walking into that hospital, of being in the same building as Marcus, even if he was unconscious and dying, made my skin crawl. But there was something else too. A dark, twisted part of me that wanted to see it. I wanted to see him laid out in that hospital bed, helpless and vulnerable. I wanted to see him suffering the way he'd made me suffer. "I'll think about it," I said. "I need some time to process this." "Please," Mom whispered. "Please come. I can't do this alone." We hung up shortly after that. I sat there with my phone in my hand, staring at nothing, thinking about everything. Over the next few days, I became obsessed with getting information about Marcus's condition. I texted Amy. I called a few old family friends. I even created a fake social media account, so I could look at Mom's posts without her knowing it was me. She'd posted about it, of course. A long, emotional status about how the love of her life was fighting for survival. About how she couldn't imagine a world without him. About how everyone should pray for him and send positive thoughts. The comments were full of sympathy. Sending prayers. "He's a fighter. Stay strong. God has a plan." Nobody knew the truth about him. Nobody knew what he really was. To them, he was just some regular guy who'd gotten unlucky with a brain aneurysm. A victim of a random medical tragedy. But I knew better. I knew exactly what he was. And sitting there, reading those comments from people who were wasting their prayers on a monster, something shifted inside me. The guilt I'd been feeling evaporated. The confusion cleared. This was my moment. This was the revenge I'd been waiting 15 years for. Not revenge I had to plan or execute or risk going to jail for. But revenge that had been handed to me by the universe itself. All I had to do was nothing. I wouldn't visit him. I wouldn't send flowers or cards or prayers. I wouldn't offer support to my mom. I wouldn't pretend to care whether he lived or died. And most importantly, I would make sure he knew it. The next morning, I texted my mom. I've thought about it, and I'm not coming to the hospital. I'm not going to visit Marcus. I hope you understand. She called me immediately. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. And again. On the fourth call, I answered. Why won't you come? She demanded. She wasn't crying anymore. She was angry. This is serious. He might die. Don't you have any compassion? Compassion. I repeated, and I heard my voice turn cold. You want to talk to me about compassion? What's that supposed to mean? And there it was. My opening. After 15 years of silence, I finally had the chance to tell her the truth, to make her face what she'd allowed to happen. But when I opened my mouth to speak, the words wouldn't come, because I realized something. She didn't deserve my truth. She didn't deserve to know the full extent of what her precious Marcus had done. She'd had 15 years to see it, to suspect it, to ask me why I'd left. And she never had. So instead I said simply, it means I'm not coming. And you can't make me. I hung up. She called back immediately, but I turned off my phone. That night, I slept better than I had in years. Over the next week, I became a ghost, haunting the edges of Marcus's medical crisis without ever showing my face. I gathered information from every source I could find, piecing together the complete picture of what was happening to him. The aneurysm had been severe. They'd operated immediately, but there was significant brain damage. Even if he survived, he'd likely never walk again. He might not be able to talk. He'd need round-the-clock care for the rest of his life. Every update I received felt like a gift. Like the universe had finally heard me after 15 years of screaming into the void. I found out through Amy that Mom had been at the hospital constantly. She'd barely left his side. She was sleeping in a chair next to his bed, eating vending machine food, wearing the same clothes for days. She looked terrible, Amy said. She'd aged 10 years in a week. Part of me felt bad about that. The daughter in me, the little girl who used to climb into her mom's lap when she had nightmares, that part of me wanted to comfort her. But the survivor in me, the woman who'd spent 15 years trying to put herself back together, that part of me felt nothing but cold satisfaction. This is what you chose, I thought again. You chose him. Now live with the consequences. Mom kept trying to reach me. She called. She texted. She sent me messages through other family members. She even showed up at my apartment one evening, looking haggard and desperate. I didn't answer the door. I stood on the other side, my hand on the knob, listening to her knock and call my name. Pepper meowed, confused by the noise, and I picked her up and took her into the bedroom so she wouldn't give away that I was home. Please, I heard Mom say through the door. Please, baby. I need you. I know we haven't been close, but you're still my daughter. Please. I almost opened the door. I almost gave in. Because despite everything, despite the betrayal and the years of silence and the way she'd chosen Marcus over me, she was still my mom. And some part of me still loved her. But then I remembered being 12 years old, pushing my dresser against my door, begging someone to help me. I remembered the bruises he left. I remembered the shame and the fear and the certainty that nobody would believe me. And I stayed silent. Eventually she gave up and left. I watched her from my window, saw her walk to her car with her shoulders slumped, and saw her sit in the driver's seat for a long time before finally driving away. The next day, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. When I opened it, my blood ran cold. It was a screenshot of a conversation between Marcus's sister and my mom. And the sister had sent it to me anonymously, probably thinking I'd want to know what Mom was saying about me. The message from Mom read, "I don't understand why she won't come. I know she and Marcus never got along great, but this is life and death. She's being so selfish. After everything I've done for her, how will she repay me?" I stared at that message for a long time. Never got along great. That's how she described it. That's how she'd summarized years of abuse. We never got along great. Either she genuinely didn't know, or she was lying to herself. I wasn't sure which was worse. I deleted the screenshot. I didn't need to see it. I already knew exactly what kind of person my mom was. 2 weeks after Marcus's aneurysm, he woke up. Amy sent me the update along with another message. "He's asking for you. Your mom says he keeps saying your name. He wants to see you." I read that message over and over, trying to understand what it meant. He was asking for me. Why? What could he possibly have to say to me after all these years? Did he want to apologize? Did he want to make peace before he died? Did he want to manipulate me one more time? Or maybe, just maybe, he wanted to see if I'd forgive him. If I'd give him absolution. If I'd let him off the hook so he could die with a clear conscience. I laughed out loud when that thought occurred to me. It was a harsh, bitter sound that scared Pepper and made her hide under the couch. He wanted me to visit him? He wanted to see me? After what he'd done? No. Absolutely not. Never. I texted Amy back. "Tell him I'm not coming. Tell him I don't forgive him. Tell him I hope he remembers everything he did to me while he's lying in that bed." Amy's response came quickly. "Are you sure? He's asking for you by name. Your mom thinks it might help his recovery if you visit." "I don't care about his recovery," I typed back. "I hope he suffers." There was a long pause before Amy responded again. "I don't know what happened between you two, but that's pretty harsh. He's dying." "Good," I wrote, and then I blocked her number. I was done explaining myself. I was done justifying my anger. I was done pretending that I should feel anything other than satisfaction at his suffering. He hurt me when I was 12 years old. He'd stolen my innocence, my trust, my ability to feel safe in my own home. He'd traumatized me so badly that 15 years later, I still couldn't sleep without a light on. I still couldn't let anyone touch me without flinching. I still had nightmares about that night, about his hand on my shoulder, about the way he'd looked at me like I was nothing. And now he was lying in a hospital bed, unable to walk, unable to talk properly, completely dependent on others for his basic needs. He was helpless. He was suffering. He was finally experiencing just a fraction of the powerlessness he'd made me feel. And I felt no guilt about enjoying it. Is that cruel? Maybe. But you know what's crueler? What he did to me. What he stole from me. And the fact that he never faced any real consequences until now. 3 weeks after the aneurysm, Marcus was moved to a long-term care facility. The doctors had determined he'd never fully recover. He'd need assistance for the rest of his life. He could barely speak. He couldn't walk. He needed help eating, bathing, everything. Mom posted about it on social media, framing it as a journey of recovery and faith. The comments were full of more prayers and positive thoughts and people saying he was lucky to be alive. Lucky. They thought he was lucky. I thought justice had finally caught up with him. Around this time, I started getting messages from other family members. Aunts and uncles and cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. All suddenly very interested in reaching out to me. They'd heard I wasn't visiting Marcus. They wanted to know why. They wanted to encourage me to do the right thing. The right thing. As if showing up at his bedside and pretending to care was the right thing. As if forgiveness was something I owed him. I ignored most of the messages. But one of them, from my Uncle Tom, got under my skin. He sent me a long text about family and forgiveness, and how holding on to anger would only hurt me in the long run. Whatever problems you had with Marcus, he wrote, he's paying for them now. He's suffering. The least you could do is show some compassion. Your mother needs you. I responded with just 4 words. He knows what he did. Tom didn't text back after that. As the weeks turned into months, I settled into a strange new routine. I checked for updates about Marcus's condition every few days. Not because I wanted him to get better, but because I wanted to know he was still suffering. I wanted confirmation that karma was still working its magic. And it was. Every update was worse than the last. He'd developed infections. He'd had setbacks in his physical therapy. He was depressed and angry and difficult to work with, according to the nurses. He'd even tried to hurt himself once, though he was too weak to do any real damage. Good, I thought to myself. Now he knows what it feels like to be trapped in a nightmare you can't escape. My therapist, the one I'd eventually started seeing again, asked me once if I felt guilty about my lack of sympathy for Marcus. He's a human being who's suffering, she said gently. I'm not saying you need to forgive him or visit him, but I'm curious about how you're processing these feelings of satisfaction at someone else's pain. I thought about it for a long time before answering. When I was 12 years old, I finally said, I prayed every single night for someone to save me. I prayed for him to die. I prayed for him to get caught. I prayed for literally anything that would make it stop. And nothing happened. God didn't save me. Karma didn't save me. The universe didn't care that a child was being hurt. I paused, feeling the familiar tightness in my chest that always came when I talked about this. So no, I continued. I don't feel guilty. I feel relieved. I feel vindicated. I feel like the universe finally heard me after 15 years of silence. And if that makes me a bad person, then I guess I'm a bad person. But I'd rather be a bad person who protects herself than a good person who forgives monsters. My therapist didn't try to change my mind. She just nodded and made a note in her file. For months after Marcus's aneurysm, I got a phone call from a number I recognized. It was the landline from my childhood home, the house where everything had happened. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Hello, I said cautiously. It's me. Mom's voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it. Defeated and broken. What do you want? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. I need to talk to you. Can we meet somewhere? Please. Every instinct told me to say no. To hang up and block the number and continue living my life without her in it. But there was something in her voice that made me pause. Something that sounded like surrender. Fine, I said. Coffee shop on Main Street. Tomorrow at 2. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you so much. I hung up before I could change my mind. The next day, I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early. I wanted to be settled, to have the advantage of watching her walk in rather than the other way around. I ordered a black coffee and sat at a table near the window, my leg bouncing with nervous energy. She walked in exactly at 2 o'clock. And the moment I saw her, I almost didn't recognize her. She'd aged so much. Her hair, which had always been carefully dyed, was now mostly gray. She'd lost weight, too much weight. Her clothes hung off her frame like they were meant for someone else. She had dark circles under her eyes that no amount of makeup could hide. She saw me and made her way over, moving like every step hurt. When she sat down across from me, I noticed her hands were shaking. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I wasn't sure you would." "What do you want, Mom?" I asked, not bothering with small talk. She flinched at my tone, but she didn't look away. "I need you to understand something. I need you to understand why I've been so upset about you not visiting Marcus." "I understand perfectly," I said coldly. "You want me to play happy family and pretend like everything's fine, like he's just some innocent victim who deserves sympathy. But I'm not going to do that." "Why?" she asked, and there were tears in her eyes now. "Why do you hate him so much? I know you two never got along, but this level of anger, I don't understand it." And there it was. The question I'd been waiting for her to ask for 15 years. The question she should have asked when I was 12 and started wearing baggy clothes and locking my door. The question she should have asked when I moved out the second I was old enough. The question she should have asked 1,000 times but never did. I looked at her, at this woman who'd given birth to me and raised me, and was supposed to protect me. And I made a decision. "You want to know why I hate him?" I asked quietly. "You really want to know?" She nodded, leaning forward. I took a deep breath. This was it. After 15 years of silence, I was finally going to tell her the truth. And I was going to watch her face as I did. When I was 12 years old, I began, my voice steady and cold. "Your husband came into my room at night. Multiple times. And he hurt me. He touched me. He violated me in ways that no child should ever experience. And you were never there to stop it because you were always working, always too busy, always too in love with him to see what he was doing to your own daughter." Mom's face went white. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "I tried to tell you," I continued, the words pouring out now like a dam had broken. "Not with words, because I was too scared. But I tried to show you. I started locking my door. I stopped eating. I wore baggy clothes. I couldn't look him in the eye. I flinched every time he came near me. And you saw none of it. Or you did see it, and you chose not to understand what it meant." "No. Mam Guisperth. No, that's not, he wouldn't." "He did," I said flatly. "For 3 years he did. Until I finally convinced Dad to let me live with him full-time. And even then, you never asked me why. You never questioned why your 15-year-old daughter would rather leave you than stay in that house. You just let me go and married him, and acted like everything was fine." Tears were streaming down Mom's face now. Her hands were shaking so hard she had to grip the edge of the table to steady them. "I didn't know," she said, her voice breaking. "I swear, I didn't know. If I had known, I would have." "You would have what?" I interrupted. "Left him? Protect me? Chosen your daughter over your boyfriend? Because we both know that's not true. You chose him over Dad. You chose him over me. You've been choosing him over me for 15 years. That's not fair," she said weakly. "I loved you. I've always loved you." "Love isn't enough," I said. "Love without protection is worthless. Love without action is just empty words." We sat in silence for a long moment. Mom was crying openly now, her shoulders shaking with sobs. Other people in the coffee shop were starting to stare, but I didn't care. "So that's why I'm not visiting him," I said finally. "That's why I hope he suffers. That's why I feel absolutely nothing but satisfaction when I hear about his pain. Because he destroyed me, and you let him. And now, finally, after 15 years, he's experiencing just a tiny fraction of what he put me through." "I'm so sorry," Mom sobbed. "I'm so sorry. If I had known." But you didn't know. I cut her off. And that's almost worse. Because you should have known. A mother should know when her child is being hurt. A mother should see the signs. A mother should choose her child over everything else. And you didn't. I stood up, leaving my untouched coffee on the table. I forgave you a long time ago for the divorce. I understood that you and Dad weren't happy. But this I can never forgive. You failed me when I needed you most. And now you want me to comfort you because the man who abused me is dying? No. I'm done. Please, Mom reached out, grabbing my hand. Her grip was weak and desperate. Please don't leave like this. Let me make it right. Let me. There's nothing to make right, I said, pulling my hand away. What's done is done. You can't change the past. You can't give me back what he took. You can't erase the nightmares or the therapy bills or the years I spent broken. It's too late. I walked out of the coffee shop without looking back. My hands were shaking, and my heart was pounding, but I felt lighter than I had in years. I'd finally said it. I'd finally told her the truth. And whether she believed me or not, whether she did anything with that information or not, I'd released that burden I'd been carrying. I drove home in a daze, my mind replaying the conversation over and over. When I got to my apartment, I collapsed on the couch and cried. Not sad tears, but relief tears. Cleansing tears. Tears that washed away 15 years of silence and shame. Pepper climbed onto my lap and purred, as if she understood that something important had just happened. That night, Mom called me 17 times. She left voicemails, each one more frantic than the last. She believed me, she said. She was so sorry. She was leaving Marcus. She wanted to make things right. She needed me to call her back. Please, please call her back. I deleted the voicemails without listening to most of them. Her apologies meant nothing to me now. They were 15 years too late. Over the next few weeks, I heard through various family members that Mom had finally left Marcus. She'd moved out of the care facility where she'd been staying to be close to him. She'd filed for divorce. She was telling everyone that she couldn't be with him anymore, though she didn't say why. Some family members supported her decision. Others were confused and angry, saying she was abandoning her husband when he needed her most. The family was divided into camps, and I watched it all from a distance, feeling nothing. Marcus, according to the updates I still occasionally received, had gotten worse after Mom left. He'd stopped trying in physical therapy. He'd become violent with the nurses when he was capable of it, which wasn't often. He'd given up. Serves him right. 6 months after his aneurysm, I received a message from the care facility. Marcus had requested to see me. He'd apparently told the nurses that he needed to speak with me, that it was urgent, that he had something important to say. I didn't respond to the message. I didn't know him anything. Not my time, not my forgiveness, not even my acknowledgement. But a week later, I received another message. This time it was from one of his nurses, a woman named Kelly who said she'd been caring for Marcus since he arrived at the facility. I know this is unusual, the message read, but Marcus has been asking for you constantly. He seems very distressed about it. He's written your name down dozens of times. He cries whenever he tries to talk about you. I don't know what your relationship is, and I'm not asking you to visit if you don't want to, but I thought you should know that he's suffering, and it seems to be because of you. I read that message 3 times, feeling a hot rush of anger. He was suffering because of me? Because I wouldn't visit? Because I wouldn't give him the forgiveness he thought he deserved? Good. Let him suffer. Let him lie in that bed knowing that I hate him, that I will never forgive him, that his dying wish will go unfulfilled. Let him spend whatever time he has left knowing that the girl he hurt grew into a woman who will never, ever let him off the hook. I blocked the nurse's number and deleted the message. 8 months after Marcus's aneurysm, Mom tried one more time to reach out to me. She sent a letter to my apartment, a long handwritten note that I almost threw away without reading. But something made me open it. Maybe curiosity. Maybe a masochistic desire to see what she had to say. Maybe just the faint hope that she'd finally understand. The letter was 6 pages long. In it, Mom detailed everything she'd come to understand since our conversation at the coffee shop. She talked about the signs she'd missed, the ways Marcus had manipulated her, the guilt that was eating her alive. She apologized over and over, saying she knew the words were inadequate, but she had to say them anyway. She told me she'd confronted Marcus about what I'd told her. He'd denied it at first, but when she'd pressed him, when she'd threatened to go to the police, he'd finally admitted it. Not all of it, she said. He'd minimized and made excuses and tried to paint himself as the victim. But he'd admitted enough. I will never forgive myself, Mom wrote in shaky handwriting. I should have protected you. I should have seen what was happening. I should have been a better mother. I know I can never make this right, and I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm just asking you to know that I believe you, and I'm sorry, and I will spend the rest of my life regretting that I wasn't there for you when you needed me most. The letter ended with, Marcus is dying. The doctors say he has maybe 6 months left. I'm not asking you to visit him or forgive him. I'm just telling you in case you want to know. I love you. I've always loved you. And I'm so sorry. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. I didn't respond. I didn't reach out. I just filed it away with all the other things I couldn't quite process yet. But knowing that Marcus was dying, that he had months instead of years, that gave me a dark kind of satisfaction. He'd get to die knowing I hated him. He'd die without my forgiveness. He'd get to die alone, abandoned by the woman he'd manipulated into choosing him over her own daughter. That was my revenge. Not something violent or dramatic. Just my absence. Just my refusal to give him peace. Just my decision to let him rot without absolution. 10 months after Marcus's aneurysm, on a cold morning in January, I received a phone call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should. Hello, I said. Is this Emily? A professional voice asked. A woman middle-aged, with a hint of an accent I couldn't place. Yes. Who's this? My name is Kelly. I'm a nurse at Riverside Care Facility. I've been caring for Marcus Patterson. My blood ran cold. I told you not to contact me. I know, and I'm sorry, she said quickly. But Marcus passed away this morning. And before he died, he asked me to tell you something. He made me promise. I should have hung up. I should have refused to hear whatever manipulative last words he'd crafted. But I couldn't. I needed to know. What? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Kelly was quiet for a moment. Then she said, he said to tell you that he knows you'll never forgive him. He said he knows what he did was unforgivable. And he said he hopes you have a good life. That's all. Those were his last words. I felt nothing. No relief that he was dead. No satisfaction. No closure. Just emptiness. Okay, I said. Thank you for telling me. There's one more thing, Kelly added hesitantly. He left something for you. A letter. He wrote it months ago, before he lost the ability to write. He made me promise to send it to you after he died. Can I mail it to your address? Every fiber of my being wanted to say no. I didn't want his words. I didn't want his apologies or his excuses or his attempts at redemption. I didn't want anything from him. But I heard myself say, "Fine. Send it." The letter arrived 3 days later. It sat on my kitchen counter for a week before I could bring myself to open it. I'd stare at it every morning while drinking my coffee. This thin envelope that contained the last words of the man who destroyed my childhood. Finally, on a Saturday morning when I couldn't stand it anymore, I opened it. The handwriting was shaky and hard to read. He'd written it months ago, Kelly had said, but clearly he'd been struggling even then. Some words were crossed out. Some sentences trailed off. But the meaning was clear enough. "Emily," it began. "I know you hate me. I know you'll never forgive me. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I'm not writing this to ask for it. I'm writing this because I need you to know some things before I die. I was a bad man. I did terrible things, not just to you but to other people. I hurt your mother. I hurt my ex-wife. I hurt everyone who ever cared about me. And the worst thing I ever did was hurt you. You were just a kid. You were innocent. And I took that innocence away. I stole something from you that you can never get back. And I'm sorry. I know sorry isn't enough. I know nothing I can say will make it right. But I need to say it anyway. I've had a lot of time to think in this place. A lot of time to remember things I tried to forget. A lot of time to face what I really am. And what I am is a monster. You were right to hate me. You were right to refuse to see me. You were right about everything. I hope my death brings you peace. I hope knowing that I suffered brings you some kind of satisfaction. I hope you can move on and have a good life, the life you deserve to have before I ruined everything. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm just asking you to live well. Don't let what I did define the rest of your life. Don't give me that much power. Be happy out of spite if you have to, but be happy. You won." That was it. No signature. Just those 2 words at the end. You won. I read the letter 3 times, looking for manipulation or lies or some hidden agenda. But there wasn't one. It was just the rambling confession of a dying man who'd finally been forced to face what he'd done. And you know what? He was right about one thing. I did win. I won by surviving. I won by building a life despite what he'd done to me. I won by refusing to give him the forgiveness he wanted. I won by making him die knowing I hated him. But his letter also made me realize something. My revenge wasn't just about his death. It wasn't just about his suffering. It was about my survival. It was about the fact that I was still here, still breathing, still fighting, while he was gone. He tried to break me when I was 12 years old. And for a while, he succeeded. But I'd put myself back together, piece by painful piece. I'd gone to therapy. I'd found work I was passionate about. I'd built a life that, while not perfect, was mine. And he died alone in pain, without the forgiveness he desperately wanted. That was justice. Not perfect justice. Not the kind of justice you see in movies where the bad guy gets arrested and goes to prison, and the victim gets closure. But real justice. Messy, complicated, unsatisfying justice. I burned his letter in my kitchen sink, watching the paper curl and blacken. I didn't need his words. I didn't need his apology. I didn't need anything from him anymore. It's been 2 years since Marcus died. 2 years since I got his letter and burned it and decided to finally, truly move on with my life. My relationship with my mom is complicated. We talk occasionally, stiff and formal conversations that don't go very deep. She's tried to rebuild a connection with me, but there's too much damage. Too many years of choosing him over me. Too much hurt that can't be healed with apologies and therapy and time. Maybe someday we'll find our way back to each other. Maybe not. I'm okay with either outcome. I've learned that not every relationship can be saved, and that's okay. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let go. I'm still in therapy. I probably always will be. But I'm better now than I was. I can sleep with the lights off most nights. I can let people touch me without flinching. I even went on a few dates last year, and while none of them turned into serious relationships, I didn't run away. That's progress. I still work in social services, helping kids who are going through what I went through. And maybe that's my real revenge. Every kid I save is proof that Marcus didn't break me completely. Every family I help is evidence that I turn my pain into purpose. Sometimes people ask me if I feel guilty about not visiting Marcus before he died. If I regret refusing to give him forgiveness. If I think I should have been the bigger person. And my answer is always the same: no. I don't owe my abuser anything. Not my time, not my forgiveness, not my compassion. I owe myself healing and peace and a life worth living. And if that makes me cold or cruel or unforgiving, then so be it. I'd rather be unforgiving than pretend that what he did was okay. Karma found Marcus in the end. Whether it was divine justice or random medical bad luck, or just the universe balancing itself out, I don't know. All I know is that he paid for what he did to me. Not enough, maybe. Nothing could ever be enough. But something. And I'm still here. Still surviving. Still winning. He took 15 years of my life. But I'm not giving him any more. I'm 29 years old now, and I have a whole life ahead of me. A life he doesn't get to be part of. A life he doesn't get to influence. A life that's completely and entirely mine. Some people might say that holding on to anger for 15 years is unhealthy. That I should have forgiven and moved on sooner. That revenge, even the passive kind, is never satisfying. But those people have never been where I've been. They've never been 12 years old and terrified and powerless. They've never had to rebuild themselves from nothing after someone tried to destroy them. So I don't care what they think. I cared what Marcus thought when he was dying. I wanted him to know I hated him. I wanted him to know I'd never forgive him. I wanted him to die without peace. And he did. That's not the revenge I imagined when I was younger. It's not dramatic or violent or the kind of thing they make movies about. But it's mine. And it's enough. Because at the end of the day, I survived. I'm building a life. I'm helping others. I'm moving forward. And Marcus? Marcus is dead and forgotten, exactly like he deserves to be. That's justice. That's revenge. That's victory. And after 15 years of waiting, I finally had enough. If this story resonated with you, if you believe that sometimes the best revenge is simply surviving and thriving, leave a comment below. Share your thoughts on karma, justice, and healing. And if you know someone who needs to hear that it's okay to not forgive, share this video with them. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to give your abuser peace. Thanks for listening. Until next time.